aside, scientists are now investigating how Tonga's Tonga-Hunga Ha'apai volcano was able to send a shockwave which completely circumnavigated the globe.
There has been no contact with the nation's Ha'apai group of islands since the massive eruption, which took place Saturday, January 15th, and countries including New Zealand and China are scrambling to supply the stricken areas with food, water, and other supplies.
Scientists had issued a tsunami warning ahead of Tonga-Hunga Ha'apai volcano eruption, but satellite photos showing the sheer size of it are astonishing people around the world. The volcano is located about 64 kilometers north of Tonga's capital, Nuku'ailofa. The blast from the volcano could be heard in Alaska, its plume of ash, steam, and gas rising like a giant mushroom above the South Pacific. Tonga is a Polynesian country of more than 170 South Pacific islands and home to about 100,000 people. Communication lines with the country have been severed by the explosions, and details of death and how badly affected the islands are unknown. Professor David Tappin, the British Geological Survey's principal investigator, says the number of volcanoes in the area means there is a lot of seismic activity which is constantly displacing rocks and the surface below the South Pacific.
The Earth's surface is reasonably constant area, so if you're creating rocks, matter at one location, you've got to destroy it somewhere else, and the destruction takes place along what we call convergent margins, and this is where these thick oceanic plates, up to 10, 15 kilometers thick, plunge into the mantle.
Professor Shane Cronin from the University of Auckland has been following developments since the last major explosions. He explains the eruptions at Tonga-Hunga Ha'apai has been building up over the past 20 years.
Over that time, the magma has been building up inside the edifice, and it's been slowly sort of releasing gas. But what happens is that you've got seawater seeping down and the hot magma below, so you get a kind of a sealing effect that goes on above the magma where the gases and the pressure is held in, but the magma still keeps arriving and the pressure rises and rises to the point where the whole edifice can't contain it any longer. And then you have the sudden explosive release of that material and it breaks apart.
According to Cronin, the initial eruption is just half of the extraordinary event.
It would be an amazing big blast, but what happens next is that you've got that material that's 1,200 degrees C, and it's been broken apart by the internal gas pressure, and that material is then touching water that's only about 20 degrees C, and you get this massive flashing of water into steam. And when you go from liquid into steam, it's about a 70 times expansion rate. So you've got a turbocharge on your explosion. So that's why it went so violently up and out. And I was just reading some analysis now about the column height reaching well above 30 kilometers. And some estimates are as high as 39 kilometers, which is, for some of the meteorologists, saying that this is the highest column that they've ever recorded.
Perhaps the biggest problem Tonga experiencing is the ash, which is now coating the main island, transforming it into a grey moonscape and contaminating the rainwater that people rely on to drink. New Zealand's military is sending fresh water and other much-needed supplies, but it also reports the ash covering Tonga's main runway will delay flights. One of the major contributing factors to the vast size of the column, which shot out of the water, was the depth of the ocean where the explosions took place. Cronin believes the event would not have appeared as dramatic had the volcano been much deeper, because the explosions would have been below the ocean surface. Instead, what we witnessed were dynamite conditions. These fast productions of boiling magma or molten rock in the crust of the earth is described by Cronin as a ring of fire. He says it's part of the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, and there you have this really high rate of magma productions. Hours after Tonga-Hunga Ha'apai sank into the sea, the volcano erupted with devastating force, leaving very little behind. The shock waves crossed the oceans to cause an oil spill and 2 drownings in Peru, the coast in Japan, and New Zealand. Even West Coast America felt the impact. Cronin explains how such powerful shock waves are created after the explosions.
So the explosion is so rapid, you think, okay, it's going to push the water out of the way, but it also pushes the air out of the way. And the explosion is not just one thing, it's like exploding, 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 exploding. And then that couples with the air and couples with the water. We have the tsunami, and then we have those air pressure waves. And again, I was reading some data that was just coming through now that the air pressure wave actually went around the Earth and came back again. And so, I was looking at a station in Miami where they recorded the first pressure wave, they recorded the pressure wave coming from the other side of the Earth, and then they recorded it again. So that's remarkable.
The UN World Food Programme is exploring how to bring in relief supplies and more staff, and has received a request to restore communications lines in Tonga, which is home to about 105,000 people. Communications with the island nation are limited because the single underwater fiber optic cable that connects Tonga to the rest of the world appears to have been severed during the eruptions. The company that owns the cable said the repairs could take weeks. A second undersea cable that connects the islands with Tonga also appeared to have been severed.